At this time, State Senator Bob Hall. He's from Senate District 2, which is our neighboring Senate district. We appreciate him coming all the way out from Edgewood, and appreciate you giving your attention to him as he addresses the topic more specifically to Texas. Please give a warm welcome to Senator Bob Hall.
Thank you very much. I'm not sure I can follow that chicken joke. That's that one kind of took it all there. What I'm going to do is, Dr. Peter Pry is one fantastic guy. I've been working with him for a while now. He's a very good friend. His book that he talks about up there, Blackout, I like his book. It's a really good book. He quotes me in it. That's what. So, now I wrote an article on it, and he used that as an example of why states can't get anywhere with this project in there. But what I'm going to do is I'll skip through some of the slides because a lot of what I have to say is for an audience that didn't hear Dr. Pry talk for 45 minutes on the subject, so I've got a lot of duplicate. What I'll do is I will cover some of the points that I really think are important that people need to remember, and as we go through this. As he says, it's an existential threat. It is one thing that can absolutely take down America. And it's the one thing that makes it very difficult for people to accept this as a legitimate threat. They just have a hard time wrapping their heads around anything happening to America. Most people think we're absolutely bulletproof. We leap tall buildings and travel faster than speeding bullets. In reality, we aren't. Because where we are today, we're at the convergence of an explosion in technology that has changed the way we live, coming together with a dynamic change in the geopolitical world that no one really saw coming, to the point where we are today in the side of technology is that we have moved a man-made thing called electricity up to being the third most important thing to sustaining life. The only two that are more important to sustaining life as we know it today is air. All of us will die in a few seconds without air. Water, live for a few days without water. Good many of us here will live longer without food than we will without electricity. And one of the government studies says that if we were out without electricity for 11 months, we would lose 90% of the population of America. That's 300 million people. That's 9 out of 10 of you sitting here would be gone in 11 months. In about 30 days, a significant number of people will be gone. Anyone depending on medicines, for sure. Anyone that on an electrical device, for sure. And so that's the technology side. There is nothing that we do, and I would challenge you to think of something that you actually do that doesn't entail electricity besides mopping the floor and raking leaves, if you still do that by hand. Everything. Because when the electricity is gone, your cars don't start, your watches don't run, your TV doesn't work, telephones don't work. The millennials will find that this thing called a cell phone, they will go nuts because all it will be is a paperweight for them. You will not be able to pump water, sewer, gas. We will be back in the 1800s. And as I've mentioned before, actually there is a group of people that will do just fine for a while and they won't even know anything happened. And that's the Amish, because they don't use electricity. But as a good friend of mine pointed out, as soon as I said that, he says, yeah, but they won't do it for long because they don't have any guns either. So it will be a life-changing event, and that's one of the reasons. And the other side is the geopolitical scene. For years and years and years, you know, some of us grew up going to school with drills where we climbed underneath the desk in school expecting the nuclear attack and we were going to be protected by that desk. in there. But we expected that if America was going to be taken down after World War II, it was going to take Russia or China or a nation like them that could just outgun us to take us. And we've never experienced real conflict on our continent by a foreign nation. You know, the British didn't get very far inland when they came. But we really feel that we are totally not vulnerable because we have a superior military force. And we do. We have a military force that could take on the Russians or take on the Chinese. But here we are looking at a threat that is so simple to accomplish that people just can't think about it. Because this threat can be accomplished by a small group of people. It doesn't take an entire army. It doesn't take an arsenal of nuclear weapons. We're talking about 5 or 6 people that get their hands on a medium-range missile and get access to a rusty old cargo ship and launch that missile off the coast of Texas, off of Galveston. All it needs to reach is an altitude of about 250 nautical miles, roughly over the central part of the United States, call it Kansas. Set that weapon off, have no impact, no effect on any humans. You won't even know that it happened. There are no kinetics, there's no blast, there's no overpressure, there's no noise. It will be a micro second burst of bright light. Most people won't even see it, but anything electrical will cease to run. And that's 6 people, 1 missile, 1 nuclear weapon, and 1 cargo ship is all it takes. And it can get less sophisticated than that. A simple weather balloon could carry it high enough to do almost as much damage as one at 250 nautical miles. You heard Peter Pryor talk about a jet aircraft with a zoom climb could do a similar thing. So, and right now, there are 2, not 1, but 2 North Korean weapons-grade satellites. They're in a South Polar orbit. That is, they circle the Earth, coming all across America from the South Pole, going over the North Pole and back again. Each one crosses the United States twice a day. One was put up in April of 2013. They put the second one up earlier this year on January 15th. And I learned, now they've known about this, but I learned a month ago that neither one of those satellites, we monitor all the satellites up there to see what they're doing, what everybody's satellite, we monitor them. We learned that neither one of those satellites has ever sent back any data. That really means only one of 2 things. Either both of them are totally broken and didn't work, or they're waiting for their signal to arm and launch a nuclear weapon for an EMP attack. And we know that's on the mind of our enemies because we have intercepted, we have captured Iranian documents, war plans, in which they talk about an EMP attack on the United States. 22 different scenarios include EMP as one of the modes of attack on the United States to start it. We have North Korean documents in which they consistently talk about using EMP as a part of a threat against the United States to take us out. They have launched missiles. The media has played them up as failures. Failures because they didn't take the normal trajectory for an intercontinental missile attack, and they ignore the fact that the trajectory they did take was exactly what you would use to launch an EMP attack. So this is, from a standpoint of being real, it is truly something that we have the data out there. The military recognizes this threat. This past year, they made a commitment of almost $1 billion to move the command structure back into Cheyenne Mountain, where NORAD used to be. Sure, many of you remember that's where we were going to protect our lead components of our military was in Cheyenne Mountain until we figured out that the Russians had nuclear weapons that were big enough and accurate enough that they wouldn't survive a direct hit, so we quit spending the money and abandoned it. Well, we're now moving back into it because for the sole purpose of providing protection for that command structure from an EMP attack. That's why they're moving back in there. So the military knows about it. The military has been weaponized or protecting communications and electronics gear since the early 70s against what they call nuclear hardened. That is for radiation, shock, and for EMP. Depending on where it was being used, it would meet different levels of it. Just give you a little bit of my background in it, because this is one of the things that the power companies, who are the ones that are really standing in the way of this happening, came with their attack before they learned that I had a legitimate background in this whole thing. And then they changed the way they came after us after that. It's not after I read Newt Gingrich's book about this that I got interested in it. Matter of fact, this is one of those things that says there are no accidents in this life. God is in control. No one is here by accident tonight. Every one of you is here for a purpose, just like you have been many other places for a purpose that God has for you. And sometimes those places we've been, we can't figure out why in the world we were there or how did it happen that way. It's because we don't understand what God's plan was in the long run. And I say that because back when I graduated from the Citadel with my degree in electrical engineering, for 4 years I had thought nothing except what can I do to get myself positioned so I can go to flight school, because I was going to be a hot shot fighter pilot when I graduated. That's all I thought about. That's all I wanted to do. And so I positioned myself in the military corps and with my grades to make sure that that's where I went, except I couldn't pass the final physical because of 20/25 vision on my eyes. And they told me, he said, son, you aren't going to fly any airplanes for this man's Air Force. You're going to take a different job. And so I said, okay, I guess that's what I'll do, because I graduated, I had a regular commission, second lieutenant, and says, well, what we will do, since you graduated top in your class, you tell us where you want to go, and we'll give you a ground job wherever you want to go. I've never been to California, so I said, I don't think I'd like to go to California. So they said, okay, so they sent me to San Bernardino, California, to Norton Air Force Base, where the Minuteman missile program was under development. That was their R&D side, the research and development. It was not the operational side. It was where we did the design work for the future changes that were being made to the missile system. When I showed up out there, I was the very first second lieutenant to ever be assigned to that program. They all wanted senior captains, majors, and colonels, and they looked at me and said, what are you doing here? I said, sir, I got orders. And because you've been to the military, you know how worthless a second lieutenant is. Nobody wants them around. So, but anyway, after I've been there about 3.5 years, I just made captain. I was a junior captain. And some people from the Pentagon showed up from an organization called DARPA, kind of the research arm of the Pentagon. And they said, we have a new threat that we have discovered against our strategic missile systems, and we have got to fix the missile right now, because the threat is one that unbalances MAD. You remember mutually assured destruction? We were in a race. Thank goodness we did that, because we put ourselves in a position that didn't matter who started the war, the Russians, the Chinese, or the US, everybody was going to lose because we had so much firepower. Well, it turns out this threat was exceptional in that we were vulnerable to what they call the EMP pin-down threat. They gave the Russians the ability to set off a nuclear weapon above the atmosphere, and it would kill any of our missiles in flight, because our missiles had solid-state guidance systems. We were smarter than the Russians. We were more advanced in technology. We had solid state. The Russians still used vacuum tubes in their computer systems, so they were not vulnerable. So we were in real trouble. It was the highest classified program in DOD at the time, highest priority because it had to get fixed quietly without anybody ever finding out we had the problem. Well, after about 6 months, now I'll back up just a little bit. When I got there, I was assigned to the ground electronic system. It was divided into two parts. They had the missile in one office for what's called the airborne side, and then the ground side, which is all the command and control, the launch control facilities, the launch facilities, and all the communications gear. That's where I was. And the two offices just worked together, but never really together, separately together. After about 6 months, the problem for the missile was not being fixed. Nothing was being accomplished, and the general stopped the program and said, we're going to reorganize and we're going to get the job done, and we're going to get it done now. And why? Only God knows. I got picked out of the ground system as a junior captain. This should have been a full colonel's job. I was a junior captain. I was taken out of the ground system and made project manager over 9 lieutenant colonels and colonels. That was my team. And anybody who's been in the military knows how well that goes over. The junior captain in charge of colonels. Well, that was my assignment, so that was the job I did. Anyway, I changed what we were doing. I got the program back on track. We got the changes made, ran through the test program, and started deploying the fixes, and went on to be the project officer to lead the design effort to design a ground-based EMP detector, which had never been designed before, and an airborne-based one to mount in the aircraft, the command and control aircraft that communicated with the ground systems. I was project officer for both of those. Then I left the Air Force a while later. I never told the family, I never told friends, because it was so highly classified. I never told anybody what I had done. And now about 6 years ago, I picked up a magazine, and there was an article in there about the vulnerability of our grid system. And I looked at it and says, what in the world are they talking about? Because see, we never considered that in the military. Because we were going to have an all-out nuclear war, we weren't really expecting much in our power system to survive anyhow. So we never thought about that. So I read the article, thought it was interesting, but it referenced an EMP Commission report that had been put out by the White House recently. And so I think I'll read that. So I sent for a copy, I got it. It arrived on a Friday, and I started reading it, and I was mesmerized by it. I spent the whole weekend going through the report because I kept saying, geez, this is good. These guys know what they're talking about. This is a good report. When I got through with it, I said, I wonder who wrote this. So I went and looked at the authors, the contributing authors to it, and there were some of the same people that I had worked with back when I was in the Air Force and came up with the design fixes for the Minuteman missile were now involved in what we need to do to protect our electrical grid system. Shortly after that, I ran into a fellow by the name of Frank Gaffney for the National Center out of Washington that was deeply involved in trying to get our Congress to do something. Met him on an entirely different subject, and we just happened to stumble into a conversation that led to grid security. Started talking about the Texas grid, and soon thereafter I ended up running for office and getting elected, and asked, what are we doing about the Texas grid in the legislature, and found that nobody was doing anything. And I said, well, now we are going to do something about it. When I learned that Texas has its own electrical grid. So I stepped up and had a bill, and I got introduced to the lobby. I learned what the lobby does, some of it anyhow, and found how truly powerful they are. Did manage to get a bill out of the Senate, but it got killed in the House. Since that time, I've convinced the Lieutenant Governor, or he has become convinced on his own, that this is serious enough to have done an interim study. So we have it as an interim study right now. I've also met with the governor on 3 different occasions to discuss his position, and he has told me that it is a priority item for his office. Now, don't ask me to define what priority for his office means. I don't know whether that's just before or just after the pre-K bills in there. But anyway, they are talking about, being somewhat supportive of it. I don't think we're completely there yet to say that this has a real good chance of getting through, but I think we're a whole lot better off. When we first started the session last year, there was nobody in Austin that could even spell EMP. I kid you not, in there. So, now they do. And forgive me, I went to all that trouble to get these slides set up, but after what y'all went through, rather than me go through those slides, I just wanted to give you the overview without trying to flip through slides and talk to them. But I do have one piece in there I want to show you, have you watch. We've got a number of organizations that work with us, including okay. Get me worried there, because I am technology challenged with the computer here. Allen's West organization